Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We welcome you to the second session of Gandhi Matters, which the Raza Foundation is organizing in collaboration with the India International Center. This is a series which is going to run through the 150th year of Mahatma Gandhi, and hopefully every month. The first one was a lecture by Professor Ashish Nand. This is the second one, now a lecture by Professor Ganesh Devy. May I request Professor Ganesh Devy? Most of you who are here know Ganesh Devy. He has been a professor of English, of linguistics. He created a center for studies of Indian languages. He also created a tribal university. He has been an active, what is the word, cultural activist. We were comrades in arms in a campaign against intolerance, etc.
Still are. We still are.
He has done a lot of work which one can say is in the true Gandhian spirit. And therefore, it is not simply because he is such an eminent scholar, it is also a person who has been working in the true Gandhian spirit that we thought to invite him to this lecture. He had, of course, won many awards, and I need not mention them. His topic is truth from the beginning to the Mahatma. I think it is very appropriate because we are living in a time where truth seems to be almost in minority. And there is such a big grandeur around lies which are spoken from the highest quarters every day. So we must try to assess what is the situation of truth amongst all these lies which are being thrown upon us every day. Professor Ganesh Devy.
I am not a scholar of Gandhi literature. I have not been a devout follower of Gandhi through my life. In my little life, there have been occasions when I told lies. Therefore, I do not consider myself morally fit to comment on Gandhi. Yet, this old man, alive, though not with us, has again and again visited me in moments of crisis in my life. When I have been in doubt, surprisingly, unexpectedly, this lean body, the pair of glasses, the homemade sandwich, the lion clasp, and the great fearlessness, the greatest moral courage, they all come to me and rescue me from my moments of crisis. So it is out of that sense of obligation, that in a way sense of belonging, just as when it rains, you don't own the rains, but you do belong to those rains because you get soaked. So Gandhi has rained on me. Sometimes because I wanted that to happen, but very often completely irrespective of despite of my wanting or not wanting. And just as I am beholden to the rains that give life to us, I am beholden to Gandhi, who is given the life to my mind. Out of that sense of gratitude and with complete awareness of my many inadequacies in addressing you, I present to you a few half-baked thoughts on a topic which has defeated quite a brigade of philosophers across centuries, the idea of truth. One wonders if there has been any philosopher at all who has been equal to the task of telling us decisively with finality what truth is, was, or shall be. My little curiosity is to think as to what is it that Mahatma Gandhi brought to this idea of truth. I mean, if we were to sit in silence and try to listen to his voice, necessarily, invariably, only two words come to us. One is non-violence, the other is truth, or probably truth and non-violence, satya or ahimsa, in that sequence. Non-violence is relatively less difficult to understand. I shall not say it's easy to understand. But because we understand violence, and because we experience violence, and also because, whether we like it or not, we have been co-conspirators in increasing violence in the world, we at least get some notion of what non-violence can be. But what about truth? How do we show it? How do we describe it? How do we ascribe it to somebody or something or some era in history? So this has been my curiosity. Some years back, a group of publishers decided to bring out a book on truth. Their idea was there would be one essay written in Italian, another in Chinese, third in Arabic, fourth in English, fifth in French. The task of writing the English essay was assigned to me. Obviously, this group of publishers did not want to run into profit, but run into loss. And because where angels fear to tread, a person like me likes to rush in, I accepted that task. The book was done. It was suitably retranslated into Arabic, Chinese, French, Italian, English, different essays. A thin book made useful for students, first-year students in colleges. I opened the book when it came to me. I knew about my essay. And in that I had written about versions of various meanings of truth in the Upanishadic philosophy, the Gita, and so on and so forth. And so I was not interested in reading my chapter, but I was interested in reading what the Chinese had written, what the French philosopher had written, what the American philosopher had written. And I found that the Chinese meaning of the term truth was exact opposite of the Sanskrit meaning of the word sat. In Sanskrit, sat or asat, that is that which exists, was designated to the most abstract, the abstract beyond the abstract. something unnameable, sometimes as Tat, sometimes as Isha, sometimes just as you yourself, without any attribute, Nirguna, without any form, Nirakara, without any limits. The Chinese describe truth as the most visible. That was a shock to me. Most formal, that was another shock to me. Most tangible, that was yet another shock to me. So I said, if truth is one thing in China and another in India, then this truth must be a great film, and one must chase it. There were further shocks. I will not get into all what the Italians say, what the European philosophy of truth is, what even the American philosophy of truth is. Even Americans have a philosophy of truth, and that was another shock to me, which is now blossoming in the great overflowing confidence of a very great president of America in the term post-truth. Sat, as in the Gita, for instance, that which is there, it shall be there. There has never been any time, there has never been any temporal space when Sat just did not exist. Na sate vidyato bhava, na bhavo vidyate sat. It is always Vidyaman. And Vidyaman is not visibly present. It is present, transcending the visible and the duality between the visible and the invisible. That's the take that Gita has, one of the takes on the question of truth in ancient wisdom. Then there is, of course, the question of practicing truth. And there we were told to speak truth. Satyam vadat. But practicing truth in action, the word changes. And there you have to follow dharma. Speak truth, follow dharma. The two are seen practically as synonyms in that utterance, in that particular segment of the Upanishads. The Vedas and the Upanishads had accepted that truth has at least one quality in its manifest form, and that is, it is verbal, that it is spoken, that it is a question of speech, that truth is to be truth is that which can be spoken, or some of that which is spoken can be truth. At least that much material ground our ancient seers had given to the question of truth. This has not been the only version, not the only idea of what truth has been. Buddha had a different take on this, for instance. I mean, for this eightfold patha or what, there is a fourfold basis. And it was described as the great four, or the most profound truths, most profound four truths. And these profound truths for Buddha, or one branch of Buddhism, if you call it Buddhism, if you like it. I don't like it. They were to recognize that suffering exists. Then to recognize that suffering can be ended. But in order to have that suffering, you have to recognize the cause of suffering. So there is suffering, its recognition. The cause of suffering, its recognition. The cessation of suffering, which is a possibility, recognition of that possibility. And then finally, the mode or the method through which suffering can be ended. Recognition of that mode or method. So for Buddha, truth was a matter of recognition. It was not lifted to some autonomous, complete in itself realm of being. So it was placed within the context of life as it is lived, and also the life of the mind, which suffers as well as enjoys the life as it is lived. This was a different way of looking at what truth is. Rather than placing it into some divine word, it was placed within the framework of the human affairs in the world. If we were to compare these two with the Western understanding of truth, beginning with the Greeks, we have a very interesting perspective there. One of the most fundamental problems that the Greek philosophical mind struggled with, came to terms with, coped with, was the question of shadow. How to disentangle shadow from substance had been a very great mystery, jinx, for the Greek thinkers. I mean, it's not just the Plato's caveman looking at the shadow, feeling frightened or excited, or both at the same time. But their very worldview had embedded within it this question of shadow. Now, if you promise not to laugh, I'll describe this worldview. The worldview, that is the world as real, not the world as true. The view of the world as real. The Greeks believed that the sky above us is a kind of a lid, L-I-D. And we are inside a kind of a box. और ये जो ढक्कन है, the lid, my English pronunciation is not very good, therefore I am spelling out these words. This lid has holes in it, perforations, if you want to describe them scientifically. And through those perforations, through those holes, light filters in. And above that ढक्कन, there is a world which is filled with everlasting light. The proof, during daytime, light comes to us. But when we have night, there is still light coming to us from above. Therefore, above there must be everlasting light. Now the Greeks also imagined another realm of everlasting darkness. The world of this, the world of death. And from there, darkness also percolated into the world. The Greeks were not able to explain how it does. But they had a proof for this. And the proof was, they said, every body, every object has a shadow attached to it. And shadow is not possible unless there is a combination of light and darkness. That was their understanding of physics. They were constantly trying to figure out how to dissociate shadow from the body. In fact, we get that line of thinking right up to a modernist poet like W.B. Yeats, who says, once out of this body, I'll only live as a shadow. I don't want the body. The body is a burden. I don't want to carry the curse of this body as a burden. That's what Yeats was saying, trying to get back to the lit up realm of the Greek worldview. Now, truth for them was object detached or dissociated from its shadow, or object in its ideal form. And the way they use the word ideal to describe objects in that world above, those were the ideal objects for Greeks. I am trying to say that different civilizations came to terms with the idea of truth in the light of their cosmologies, their known physics, their known chemistry known to them, their beliefs in matter, spirit, their ideas of divinity, their ideas based on observations of dynamics of life. And therefore they were not identical ideas. Truth does not have, never it had, a uniform, universal meaning or range of meanings. Based on some of the Buddhist enlightenment and some of the Upanishadic idealism, spirituality, we had at the beginning of the first millennium excellent debates on the nature of truth. And we have the Vaiyakarans, we have the Mimamsaks. For instance, I mean, what struck me as an absolutely brilliant interpretation comes from Bhartrihari, Vakpadi. Bhartrihari says, talking about meaning, and he's not talking about meaning of word John or John likes mangoes. Not, he was talking about meaning with M capital, meaning of the word, meaning of existence, meaning. Bhartrihari says that imagine a stream, and there's nothing inside, I mean, there's water flowing, but you hold an object above the stream and you see shadow of that object in the stream. Now, does the shadow exist or not? Is it only an illusion? Or at least for that moment when you hold the object above the stream, is that shadow real? And to that extent, another object within our cognition. To simplify this, then him and others like him, building upon what Panini had already seeded, sown seeds for, they built the theory of spota. That is sudden, the meaning suddenly pounces on you. It explodes. It is partly your cognitive ability, partly the physical existence of the objects. They shake hands and you are into meaning. As we move forward in history, or downward if you like, I don't like that word, but William Jones would have used that downward in history, though it should be upward in history because the number of years, that number keeps increasing. It does not matter what. With the saint poets, there is a different idea of truth, and that is they were trying to swallow gods. They were hungry. खाना वो भगवान ईश्वर को चबा चबा के खाके अपने में गुलाना चाहते थे. They wanted to absorb God rather than keeping God as an object outside. The saints were rebels who refused to accept meaning, externally. They wanted to internalize all meaning, all divinity, all God, at least hold hands with it in the form of a sakha or a sakhi, a dost, sometimes even a dushman. Truth for them was a matter of experience alone. And the testimony of that experience was their own articulation and nothing more. No external testimony was necessary to justify, establish what truth is. What began as a mere verbal form in the history of human languages came to the times of the saint poets and became an entirely internalized but highly experiential abstraction. I should add very briefly that when languages emerged, human languages emerged 70,000 years ago, most of the languages were capable of practicing only the present tense. The past use of the past tense came much later. Probably for the first 40,000 years, humans were not capable of using the past tense. The present is, I mean, I stand before a mountain and say this is a mountain. I stand before something and say this is it. This is John, this is mango, this is Ishwar, whatever. But everything revolves around the verbs like is. The past tense requires a skill to tell lies, because you're talking about something which is absent, and it's even more difficult than talking about truth. We acquired it much later but when we acquired that skill, when the human languages developed the apparatus of the present tense and the past tense, and therefore the future tense as a mirror reflection, mirror image of the past, the human mind became more and more increasingly aware of the distinguished existence of truth in the affairs of the human imagination, intuition, affairs of the mind. The British had inherited, not directly, but through a lot of mediation of Latin and Old French and Middle French, and the later day philosophers of the Roman Empire, the Greek, essentially the Greek ideas of what truth is. In the 17th century, they also acquired a French and a rather innovative idea of what truth is. And this French and innovative idea came from a man called Leibniz, who decided that anything and everything known to the human mind can be fragmented and organized in terms of strings of 0 and 1. And the human ability to recognize the meaning, symbolic meaning of those strings is granted. Rationality is granted. Now, our encounter with the Western culture, which came through our encounter with the British, modified both their idea of truth as well as our idea of truth. I shall not get into how their idea of truth got modified, because I had to start talking about William Blake and Shelley and so on. I'll just speak about what happened to us. In our country, we started believing in the public discourse that whatever was written was true. What was oral was non-knowledge, and to that extent non-true, because truth necessarily has been in all cultures knowledge. There has never been any notion or abstraction or idea of truth which is separated from the idea of knowledge. All truth is seen as the ultimate knowledge. Came the British, and we started believing that what is written is true. In fact, if you go to the court today and you have to testify that you are an illiterate, you have to write a sentence that I hereby certify that I am an illiterate, signature. Then it will become true. Gandhi comes in this large history of truth at a time when the world was in a turmoil. And a turmoil like the world had not seen any time before. He comes in the world and the world was expanding. New continents were getting populated. Australia, for instance. We don't have presence of Australia in medieval history anytime, not even in the Turkish or Arabic travel accounts. It is only towards the end of the 18th century that suddenly Australia comes, America, which we had chanced upon, actually comes into play only after in our larger consciousness at the end of the 18th century, and the French Revolution. And throughout the 19th century, ideas like liberty, freedom, nation, they had started circulating. Ideas like king, feudal rules, that started getting outdated. Not as brilliant, as his other contemporaries were. I mean, just look at the sheer facts, calendar facts related to Gandhi's life. He is a man born in 1869. About 10 or 12 years before him, another great son of India called Lokmanya Bal Gangadhar Tilak is born. Tilak shoots into fame by the time Gandhi somehow is trying to find his feet in South Africa. A few years before him is born, just about 7 or 8 years before him is born Rabindranath Tagore. And by the time Gandhi is still trying to figure out how to set up one of his ashrams in South Africa, Tagore has already started with his Shantiniketan, and by the time Gandhi returns to India, Tagore has already gone away with a Nobel in literature. You have Vivekananda, Narendra Dutt, that was the name. Yeah, sometimes some words scare you. I mean, by the time Gandhi leaves for South Africa, Vivekananda is already these were brilliant minds. Gandhi is their contemporary. And what kind of contemporary? Is a man in his childhood is scared of going out in dark. He's still figuring out how to conceal his guilt or overcome the guilt for having tasted meat, for having had alcoholic drink. He's still trying to find out how to be at peace with different communities. He's trying to learn how to wear a necktie and how to play violin to please his contemporaries. He's a great devout subject of the British Empire, law-fearing and so on. But suddenly, and I did not mention Arvind Ghosh, who was about 3 years younger to Gandhi, Mohandas Karamchand, 69, Arvind Ackroyd Ghosh, 72, 1872. A man who knew about a dozen languages with great mastery over Latin and Greek, French and so on, writing brilliantly in English, which I have never understood, but greatly respected. Tremendous hold over ancient, medieval, modern literature. For him, this earth was not enough for his thought. He was thinking of all planets and many lives and many times of a cosmic consciousness. Already, 1909 or 10, Arvind was half into his Maharshitva. When Gandhi is still trying to prepare the first draft of Hind Swaraj, awkwardly written great book. Had it not been a book written by Gandhi, probably we would not have gone back to that book at all. Now, born among these great luminaries, brilliant contemporaries, great Deshbhaktas, wonderful thinkers, here is a timid, little shy man trying to find his feet on the ground and deciding for himself how he can somehow glance at God. His early confessions are, the influences were Harishchandra, Raja Harishchandra, and of course the great son of Dashrath. Not the boy who brings water, that is Shravan. He read that play, Shravan Natak. These are the influences. And Gandhi's understanding of truth was, truth is something that is spoken as a word of commitment, which is to be kept upon your life. If you give a word to somebody, then you must respect that word upon your life. What come may what, you must respect. That is his early understanding of the idea of truth. Later, almost when he's 28 or 30, he chances upon the writings of Ruskin, and he realizes that truth is not only a matter of verbal action, but truth is a matter of great compassion for those who are sitting in the last row, those who are standing at the very end. I mean, that's the idea of Ruskin's "unto this last," picked up from the Bible. And Ruskin actually advocated giving up what you have in favor of. Ruskin was not a Marxist. Ruskin was a spiritual communist. And Gandhi accepted that spiritual socialism, or whatever you can call Ruskinism. And Gandhi then added one little element to his idea of truth, that it is a verbal act, it is vacha satyata, but also there has to be some suffering associated with it. And you cannot get to truth unless there is some suffering. Buddha's truth was about how to recognize suffering in order to be free from it. Gandhi's idea of truth was about experiencing suffering in order to understand truth. At least on 2 occasions, or probably more occasions, this man stands before a judge, and the judge is saying, I will sentence you with 6 months imprisonment. This man says, sir, please send me to jail for a little longer. Another occasion they say 6 years. And he says, no, please keep me in jail a little. And why in jail? Because that suffering may bring me closer to truth. He had no hesitation in stating that. Now this is a new element, which is not there in the Vedas or Upanishads. It is not there in the Greek idea of truth. It is to some extent there in the Buddhistic understanding of truth, but it is not there in the saint interpretation offered by the medieval saints of India. Medieval saints in India celebrated the aesthetic, but at the same time they also decided to overlook the anesthetic. That is, everything was joy for them. My Tukaram, since I speak Marathi, I call him my Tukaram because he is very close to me. My Tukaram was happy all time, in honor or in insult, in glory or in gloom, in suffering or in satisfaction. Gandhi is not talking about aesthetic, all-pervasive aesthetic. He is talking about adding suffering, not pain. It's not masochism of some kind. It is suffering. And he is very, very particular about it in his words. From Ruskin, Gandhi moves on to Tolstoy. And they are both, the Tolstoy-Gandhi relationship is the relationship of contemporaries. It is a relationship of guru and chela, and both are gurus and both are chelas there. It's a very strange relationship that they have. And Gandhi then feels with Tolstoy that truth is possible. With Ruskin, some suffering. But with Tolstoy, he feels that truth is possible with poverty. That poverty is not a curse, but is a salvation of a kind. And this statement, coming at the turn of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, is an extremely powerful critique of the capitalistic, mechanistic, industrial society that was coming up. And Gandhi has for the first time brought into his range of meanings of his idea of truth and economic reality. Suffering was mental, emotional, spiritual, but poverty was stark, political, economic. Of course, I do not want to give this impression that Gandhi was influenced only in his later days, not in his early childhood, but in his youth only by Tolstoy and Ruskin. There was a great dialogue that he carried out with a Jain monk, a Jain thinker, Jayachandra. And in that dialogue, Gandhi learned the best lesson of his life. There are two that Gandhi used throughout his life, and that made him Mahatma. This was one. I'll also mention this second in a moment. From Jayachandra, from the Jain philosophy, Gandhi learned the virtue of aparigraha, non-acquisition. ग्रहण करने, हाथ से ग्रहण नहीं करने का लेसन, अपरिग्रह, non-acquisition. Gandhi learned that at the root of violence, now till that time, till Gandhi stated so, violence had been treated variously by very many people. I mean, Hobbes had spoken of violence in terms of clash between imagination and reason. Excess of imagination causes violence. That was Hobbesian theory. Chapter 9 of the Leviathan, Great Leviathan. Marx had also spoken about this, but Gandhi, in Marx's understanding, there was justice on one side and injustice on the other side. And it was a dialectic between the two, Hegelian process of. Gandhi said that acquisition, the instinct for acquisition, is the root cause for violence. And then kind of bringing together the Jain philosophy of aparigraha with Tolstoy's philosophy of poverty and Ruskin's philosophy of suffering as part of truth, Gandhi came to the firm conclusion that non-acquisition or non-violence is the absolute necessary condition for truth. The Vedas did not speak of this. Buddha had spoken of peace, but violence and against that non-violence is something slightly different from peace. Because violence has an external manifestation in the common space, peace is inside the mind of an individual. Gandhi was not talking about violence. Of course, he did talk about personal anger and things like that, but he was talking about violence in the society. Gandhi is that first philosopher in the world who said that non-violence is the absolute condition for realization of truth. No religion till then had made that kind of, taken that kind of position. Now, I said there were two great influences, learnings for him. One was, of course, aparigraha. The other, and that added a dimension to his idea of satya. The other was a very strange lady called Kasturba Gandhi, whose 150th year we are celebrating this year. Kasturba was slightly older to Mohandas, by a few months perhaps. So we are celebrating 150th year of Kasturba as well, and I hope 6 of these lectures will be about Kasturba as well, gender justice, sir. On Gandhi's testimony, Gandhi's confession, Kasturba it was who taught him fearlessness. And certainly in the great Satyagraha of South Africa, I mean that's where he discovered the word Satyagraha. He had been a failed person. He had been a failed leader. He was pleading those cases. He was writing letters to Smut. He was being, kicked out of the train. He was doing all. He was printing his paper with his hands. All those things he was doing. But this, the British Dutch division in Africa and the border created and the mindset of border, just as we are now causing a great mindset of border between Pakistan and India, that could not be wiped out unless Gandhi walked with thousands of his followers and fellows from one to the other. And that experiment was failing repeatedly till one day, out of aspiration, hope, frustration, anger, what it was, I don't know, even Gandhi did not know what it was. But he spoke to Kasturba. He said, you also walk. She was hesitant, but she agreed. And when she agreed, other Indian women in the community agreed to walk with her. And when other Indian women agreed to walk with her, other women of African communities also decided to walk with them. And this Karwa became thousands. Just as now some 10,000 Mexicans are walking towards the United States. These were thousands walking from one country to another country, breaking that mindset of borders, breaking the rule of permits, breaking the illegality branded, imposed upon Indian marriages and so on. And Gandhi succeeded. Smut actually agreed to change the law, at least modify it. It was Kasturba's participation that gave Gandhi a sense of what Satya Agraha can be. Gandhi's journey towards truth had started as a personal journey to realize. Gandhi says that one strange piece of his writings, Gandhi says that there is no God if there is no truth, and therefore truth alone is God. He says that in his autobiography, he says that he started his journey for a personal realization of God. But then these elements such as suffering, such as poverty, such as aparigraha, and finally, through Kasturba's participation, Gandhi's idea of truth imbibed in it an extraordinary element, and that element was fearlessness. Gandhi's truth will not be truth, was not truth unless it was fearless, unless it was greedless, unless it was full of compassion for the poor. That became truth for him. So it no longer remained a verbal act of two words, Satya Vachani. It transcended and moved way beyond this mere verbal casing for truth that centuries had imposed on it. Gandhi brought in, through the element of compassion, an ethical side to his truth. Gandhi brought in, through his feeling for the very last person, an element of politics to his notion of truth. And because it was so ethical and so potently political, it became an aesthetic concept. Gandhi was beautiful without being beautiful, I mean, he was not fair and lovely, but he was beautiful, I'm saying. He was not as brilliant as Arvind Ghosh or Vivekanand or Tilak, and yet he was a great luminous visionary because of this great combination of ethics, politics, and aesthetics. And his idea of truth, therefore, is a full three-dimensional idea of truth. I described from 1850s to 1909 birth of Lokmanya Tilak to Arvind Ghosh's journey to Pondicherry, those years, and Gandhi there in the background. But suddenly in the next 20 years, Gandhi is the Mahatma for the world. Is known to everybody in the world. I mean, I have experienced personally how utterly illiterate beggars have told me who Gandhi was. They know about him. Like A.K. Ramanujan used to say about the Mahabharata, that in India everybody knows the Mahabharata because nobody reads it. All over the world, Gandhi is known because nobody studies Gandhi. And it is so because Gandhi brought this concept of truth, which is a three-dimensional truth, and probably the most complex concept of truth, lifted, free, liberated from the realm of the divine, without giving up his personal quest for the divine, into the realm of the human. And those humans who actually seeking truth, living in truth, because they are willing to suffer, because they are willing to give up. In this notion of truth, there was a message for the world, and that message was a message of liberation. Not liberation as moksha, but liberation as at least an opportunity for survival. There was a warning to the world that if you vandalize the world, you shall both cause violence as well as be non-truthful. Gandhi lived a life Gandhi lived a life full of failures. If I were to write a biography, which I am not going to do, of Gandhi, I will title it A Continuously Failing Man. His failures are beautiful. They are great. They are illuminating. Because of his humility, because of his honesty. But one thing in which he never failed was maintaining a complete integration or integrity between his thought and his action. I mean, we're told by Gramsci about organic intellectuals. Gandhi had no benefit of reading Gramsci, but Gandhi had imbibed all these ideas from different eras, different saints, different people. Because of his humility, he was from the beginning to the end. In Marathi, there's a great word called nakhashikant, from your nail to the end of your hair. Absolutely, without any exception, not a millimeter of his life was an exception to this great unity between thought and action. And in that unity was the secret of Gandhi's approach to truth. In our time, we appear to have moved ahead beyond Gandhi. We appear to have moved ahead by going back. One of my friends in a Gujarat village said, we are progressing into the past. We seem to have invited upon us all the Greek shadows. And we are making our world a shadowy world, where shadow speaks to shadow, text speaks to text, untruth speaks to untruth. And that is the era of post-truth. Shadows vanish because they have no substance. And civilizations based on shadows collapse because they have no heart for compassion. Gandhi will return. He will refuse to go away from us. All of us have collectively tried to kill him by creating statues, by creating peons for him, by violating everything he has told us. And yet, this man, like that common man in Lakshman's portraits, Lakshman's cartoons, or the wordless Charlie Chaplin, stares at each one of us and raises a deep, profound question in what Tridip Surut said a few days back in another lecture, within our antaryami. Here is a great silence, Gandhi is a great silence, which encourages within each one of us a clear inner voice. Truth for him is not a verbal act. Truth for him is a great silence which is capable of raising a question inside one's conscience and in the world outside in such a way that the world changes and the very last also sees a promise of a day to come, of a light, ray of light to touch her face or his face. That is my Gandhi. Thank you.
Take any questions. Well, those who are in a hurry to go home or wherever may leave so that we can resume the. Well, normally lectures are not preceded, not succeeded by question answers, but after this very brilliant presentation in a very complex and subtle exposition of the journey of truth from the Vedas to Gandhi, you might have been provoked to ask questions, and he has agreed to take some. So go ahead. Yes, one. No, you need a mic.
I'm silenced.
No.
The inner voice.
Her voice is. She has too much of inner voice. No, you get them. Just a minute. Very good.
First of all, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for a beautiful lecture. It's something that's going to stay with me, and I'm going to mull over a lot of what you said. My question is a very simple one. I have been haunted for years by one line of Gandhiji, Hind Swaraj. He writes, and I quote, "I am not an enemy of the British, but I am of its civilization," unquote. Whatever little I know of my beloved country and what is happening today, and I admire you and many other people for standing up against the forces of darkness. However, one thing that has genuinely puzzled me, and that's why this is a genuine question, what is these forces of liberalization or globalization that were unleashed, say in 1992, which have completely changed the paradigm of development, which completely changed questions that line that Gandhiji has written in Hind Swaraj, because India was a very different India where I studied and grew up. It's a completely different direction towards which it is going today. Would you like to comment on Gandhi's line and the pattern of development that we are following today?
Sure, if there's another question, otherwise
Is there another question? Just a minute. Prempalji.
In his
Fine, go ahead.
78 years of life, Gandhi was always evolving. Earlier, he said, God is truth. Naturally, can't be untrue. So God is truth. But later on, much later, it changes to truth is God. So why and when do you think this change took place?
Okay, this is the third question. I'll answer all of them together. There is one thing.
No, there, इधर. हाँ.
बहुत अच्छा व्याख्यान रहा है, शायद हो सकता है मेरे दिमाग का आयतन कम हो। फिलोसफी बहुत डीप है, आपकी बहुत ब्रिलियंट ऐसे है, लेकिन मुझे लगता है कि 150वें वर्ष में जब हम गांधी को याद करते हैं, गांधी मैटर्स, then you have to correlate to the present circumstances. Beautifully you focus how from the Greek to Indian philosophy and how Gandhi entered, and we say this in juxtaposition to Aurobindo, Tagore, etc. And at the 1920. But after that, don't you feel when we are discussing Gandhi in 150th year, some tangible which is relevant to our society? This is not an essay for philosophy students, where truth takes at least 15 minutes. I just want, because Gandhi, each aspects of his life, और वो साधु और महात्माओं की तरह भाषण देने में यकीन नहीं, रोजाना की जिंदगी में पिछले 70 साल के आईने में 48 में उनकी डेथ के बाद गांधी कैसे बेटर, कैसे रास्ता दिखा सकता है। मुझे लगता है कि 150वें वर्ष में शायद जनता के पास कुछ ऐसे शब्द जाएंगे तो ज़्यादा अच्छा होगा, बजाय इसके कि वो फिलोसफी का कोई अच्छा ऐसे लिखे। कि मेरा अपने आयतन की मैं सीमा बता रहा हूँ।
इधर take 4 and then.
When my colleague called me that Professor Devy is speaking, I was thinking that okay, I want to learn more about languages and so on. You know that it's about truth. Today I watched a WhatsApp video where there were just after the election who wanted to be a first prime minister. There were 15 envelopes came from 15 presidencies, and then out of 15, 12 voted for Patel, 2 for Kripalani, 1 for somebody else, nothing for Gandhi. Whereas Gandhi just nothing for Nehru. Nothing for Nehru. Whereas Gandhi looked at him and he became the first prime minister. When I was reading Hindu Swaraj, he said that Hindi should be the national language of India. I used the word exact word, Hindi. Then later, when he came out with the Raza Committee report, he said that he thought Hindustani should be the national language or official language for the country. So how do we see his so-called truth, his politicking over the years and his change? How I understand, because now I'm going back with a lot of confusion.
Can I also add something?
Yeah.
That video that he's talking about, I heard it also today, and the video ends with people asking Gandhi that why did you choose Nehru as the first prime minister? And it seems in quotes it's written, the book is written by Durga Das, in quotes it's written because he speaks better English.
This is more of a comment than a question. First, your reference to the Greek lid reminded me of Hiranya Patrena, hymn of the Ishopanishad. And interestingly, Gandhi used to, in many of his communications, quote this hymn. That's one thing. And second, if I may respond to some of the things, it was in 1929 that Mahatma Gandhi made this discovery that he moved from God is truth to truth is God. And for him, it was a Newtonian discovery because it changed everything in his life, in his outlook. And thirdly, the social media thing. It is wrongly being propagated on the social media that this contest was for the prime ministership. Actually, it was for the 1946 presidentship of the Congress.
Correct.
Not the prime ministership was not the issue at the time.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. You're right.
Not the prime minister, it was the presidentship. And regarding English, what Gandhi had said that in his view, Nehru would make a better prime minister because he has an international profile. He knows how to deal, and Patel is a more earthy, ground-based man, and he would be better able to address the domestic issues.
And the age factor was there. Patel died 2.5 years later.
Exactly.
Age factor was
Exactly.
also very important.
Exactly.
Please.
Exactly.
Yeah, now you have.
It's a, please, let's consider this. We are a group of persons, thinking, brilliant persons, the best in the country sitting here, in the year 2018. And we still want to engage with Gandhi, with our friendship with him or with our contempt for him. I think that is his triumph. That is his triumph. Is there another Indian who has interested humans across countries in such a manner? I mean, there have been Indians who have spent a lot on publicity, Indians who hold many Guinness Book records, who have scored more cricket centuries. But there's one Gandhi. I think he's a man that comes to us once in 1,000 or several thousand years. We have to accept it. It will be our greatness if we grant him his greatness. He will not, if we debunk him, if we show contempt for him, if we assess him unfairly, that's not going to damage him, but we will be seen in very poor light by later generations. Now this is, I mean, to take your question, it was actually, I believe the Prime Minister got elected, there were general elections in 1952, and Gandhi never appointed any Prime Minister, as far as I know, but it was President of Congress, that's fine. And we think that it was a mistake. That may be a view. Gandhi may have a justification, that may be another view. But just as we hold Gandhi responsible, rightly or wrongly or rightly, for thinking about Nehru in one way and Gandhi in another way, future generation is going to say about you and me that we held Gandhi in a certain view and we might be blamed. So Gandhi did something, let's also do something more sensible about what we can do today, how Gandhi can lead us in our times. I mentioned fearlessness that he learned from Kasturba, I mentioned, as deliberately adding truth today. The most important feature of truth today will be fearlessness, because we are all, whether we are Americans, Turkish, French, Russian, Chinese or Indians, are intimidated and scared. We are terrified. Terror is used to subdue us, whether it is our judiciary, whether it is UPSC, whether it is CBI, whether it is whatever, every institution, whether it is Nehru Memorial, Gandhi Memorial, Patel Memorial, whatever. Gandhi teaches us fearlessness. Now, Gandhi is not going to come and tell us how we should be fearless. That is for us to decide from moment to moment in our situation. I heard recently that in Gujarat a very large statue went up. Now, if you ask Sigmund Freud to comment on that, I mean, imagine Sigmund Freud, you said this was an essay, at least you gave me A grade in my essay. So, because my philosophy professor would have failed me, but you are more generous. Thank you for your kindness. I am now getting into a little bit of psychology. This large statue, Sigmund Freud says that the fears that you have, the fears that a person has, are given a sublime form, and out of glorification of those fears arises the notion of God. A great statue of unity points to fear of unity among people. Between Patel and Gandhi, we have very good, if I am saying in very simple, let's all be united. and let's be fearless. And no power in the world can intimidate us. He has demonstrated that. I tried to do it in a little way, in my humble way. Everybody is doing it. Everybody is risking their career, life, friends, properties, income tax returns, whatever. Let's be fearless and be united, and India will still be safe. But to come to your question, the liberalization, if it were a continuity of the idea of liberty, by the way, the Statue of Liberty was gifted by the French people to America. It was Statue of Liberty. This statue should have been called Sardar Patel statue, because Sardar Patel had a name. Sardar Patel had a name. Gandhi did not deny him the name. Gandhi called him Sardar Patel. Gandhi gave him that name. But today his name is being denied. He is called Unity. That is a statue of Sardar Patel. It should be called Sardar Patel statue. The French people gave that Liberty statue to America. The fellow who built the Eiffel Tower had also constructed this statue. Anyway, to come to your question, if liberalism, neoliberalism, or whatever it is called, which has been very unjust to the poor of the world, marginal of the world, cultures of the world, diversities of the world, if it had been an extension of liberty, there should have been an attendant change in the consciousness. There should have been, Tagore, Gandhi and Aurobindo, even before we became independent, had told us that don't get restricted by the idea of nation. Tagore created Vishwa Bharati. Aurobindo spoke of a global consciousness. Gandhi said that Sabarmati Ashram is for training people in truth and non-violence, which are universal values, not national values. We, people like me, I hold myself responsible. I was born exactly when we became independent, and all these years, persons like me looked at their own comfort, their own chairs, their own material gains, and we simply forgot that change in the consciousness of the society, increase in compassion, is our responsibility. Everything is not the flaw or the fault of the enemy or the adversary or the competitor. I think we must begin with, if Gandhi had been around today, he would have started with Atma Shuddhi. He would have trained his body differently to face the situation with courage, involving women. In our society, educated people were tolerant of female feticide. Several thousand women in Chhattisgarh are missing. Nobody has a tear to shed. The gender ratio is changing in every state. Haryana, absolute, but even in Chhattisgarh. We did not feel, I'm not saying this about any single individual, but as a class, those who were supposed to keep knowledge up could not keep knowledge up. 700 Indian universities, not even one ranks in the best universities in the world. We could not keep knowledge up, we could not keep truth up, we could not keep compassion up. And that is not the work of governments.
Can I respond to what you're saying? My question is slightly different. It's about Gandhiji has written.
Forgive me. I know it's just that I value your work and I want you to respond to this. Gandhi has written, I am not an enemy of the British, but I am of its civilization. The paradigm that on which we are walking is that very civilization that he was an enemy of, and it is not something that has started now. We are fighting the forces of fascism, but it has started earlier. So what are we going to be talking about, raising the consciousness of the people, when all of us intellectuals had joined that paradigm of liberalization, the kind of development we have?
quite frankly, I respect Gandhi. You must have sensed that in my lecture. But I refuse to be a slave of Gandhi's ideas. I am a creature of my times, and I will have my ideas. Gandhi had his ideas. But my ideas will be Gandhian ideas, not Gandhi's ideas. That is not. Ever since the 19th century, we are caught in that. The Western culture, civilization that Gandhi described as an idea, if it were there. You know, you say, so we are caught. They have been pumped into our being in this country, and we thought modernity, progress, all of them come from Paschim. In retaliation, some Indians decided to go back to Purva, that means the past, some imaginary glorious past, where we had plastic surgeries in every village performed. I think we need to belong to today, not the East, not the West, not the past, but we must be rooted in our own land, look at our own situation, find our own solutions. Gandhi would have done that, and we should be doing that. Our situation today looks dismal. I believe it will change. But Gandhi's situation was far more dismal when he started facing it. In the year 1905 or 6, if Gandhi had thought of India, it was a terribly shattering after the the Bengal partition, and what was happening in India was just terrible. But Gandhi never gave up on hope, and he gave us hope. When India got partitioned, Gandhi did not cry. He wept. But he did not give up on hope. I think hope is what will keep us going, and this country is great enough to absorb some minor shocks, but rise again and move forward. But if we keep going to the past or the West, then we shall not be here. We need to find our address. And I agree with you there. Whether liberalization is entirely at fault, whether the social middle class is entirely at fault, these could be questions which can be challenged. There is something wrong in the state of Denmark, that we know. But in that state of Denmark, I'm quoting from Shakespeare, there is a Gandhi. That's a great solace. That's a great solace. But we need to, there is a great Ambedkar with us, there is a great Gandhi with us. But we need to recreate an Ambedkar, recreate a Gandhi for our own times. That will come through suffering, aparigraha, if many of us are ready to give up. We actually go long distance to save on little tax payment. So I think we have to hone up our moral caliber to internalize Gandhi for our time, and Gandhi will respond. He is a magic and a mantra for all time. But his photograph is neither a magic nor a mantra. His photograph is a lifeless object, to be respected because there is a chhabi. But it is the spirit of non-violence and truth. And we should not have contempt even for our enemies. We need not demonize them, because then we will become demons. All that we have to be is to be ourselves, as Gandhi said in Hind Swaraj, to be not like the British, but be like yourself. And those people will go away. They will. I promise. Let's meet 6 months from now and let's celebrate. Thank you.
Now I'm afraid there's maybe one last question. Okay.
1927, to be precise, when he came to writing the fourth part of that, Experience with Truth, because the first part was personal, second was how he entered the social, third was the struggle, the fourth was a kind of a sannyasa within that autobiography where he said, truth alone can be God. I mean, he put truth above God because he realized that non-violence and truth together can be far more effective than even gods can be. Thank you. Yes.
Because you're very energizing to my neck. I use and everything. But what really fascinates me all my life about the incident as a child when he stole, when he did the great stealing in the family. Then that stealing tormented him for a long time until the day he decided that he must confess it to his father, and he did not know how to confess. Then he wrote a letter to his father, and that was, I think, the time that he was experimenting with truth and non-violence. And his father only cried after reading the letter, and he did not reprimand him. And that also affected Gandhi. That's what my understanding is. So long before Ruskin and Tolstoy, he was experimenting with truth.
Yes.
That always, haunted me. How did he get the courage also to undo it, to come out and accept the guilt, accept and make the confession? And that is the real seeds of his greatness all his life. And how did he get it? In the, I think, family's environment, his mother or his father, whatever it is, it was those seeds. That's what I firmly believe.
Actually, just as where the Mahabharata, which will always fascinate us for centuries, the entire freedom struggle with Gandhi as one of the main heroes there is going to fascinate us for all time to come. We have to consider ourselves fortunate that we belong to a country in which Gandhi lived and he died. Thank you.
Well, friends, with that, we're coming to the end, but before thank you, Dr. Devy, for a brilliant and a very illuminating lecture. I think this lifts the series to a level of relevance and brilliance, which I fear may be difficult to maintain and keep on.
You're not allowed to fear.
But anyway, thank you very much. We have a few things in our basket for you this month. About 50 Hindi writers come together 2 days, 23rd and 24th of November. This we have been doing in collaboration with the Krishna Sobti Shivnath Nidhi. Incidentally, Krishna Sobti, a great Hindi writer, gave to the foundation 1 crore and 11 lakhs of rupees for promotion of literature and language, and it is from that nidhi that we organize this, where 2 days young writers drawn from 20 towns of India will be, and this time we have forced them to read some forgotten text. That is Tulsidas, Vinay Patrika, Surdas, Bhramar Geet Sar, poetry of Dev, poetry of Ghananand, a play by Bhartendu Harishchand, and a fantasy novel in Hindi. So they'll be there for 2 days. Those of you who are interested in knowing what the young are doing are most welcome. On 27th, we have the Kelucharan Mahapatra Memorial Lecture. This will be held in the Gulmohar Hall at India Habitat Center, when the dance critic Leela Venkatraman will be delivering a lecture. And as if this is not enough, 29th, we have 4 poets, Arun Kamal from Patna, Uday Prakash from Delhi, Bipin Chaudhary from Hisar, and from Delhi, reciting their poems. This will be in the annex. So as I have been saying again and again, please keep these dates in mind and come, because you can't be doing anything better publicly than that. Thank you.